What's that creeping around me? Nudges in the spirit is what it be. Footsteps in the darkness.
Hey, what's good, LBK? It's your brother, Robert Jenkins. Y'all heard that music, so you know what? It is time to focus. Today, we have a very special guest in studio with us, Mrs. Jennifer Velasquez, who is a registered nurse that I met through a good friend of mine named Steve Taylor. Jennifer and I haven't really ever had a chance to really just sit down and get in depth with things, but from what I understand, we have quite a bit of similar views on medicine. Some people might call it alternative takes, and I don't call it alternative. I think it makes more sense than traditional medicine, you know what I'm saying? But just to go over there, Jennifer's bio a little bit. As I said, she's a registered nurse. She's co-founder of Good News Organics. And if you like me, that good news part caught your ear because you know what the good news is. I ain't going to spell it out, but y'all know what it is. You should know what it is. You ought to know what it is, right? Well, she's worked as an award-winning ER nurse, and she also had a successful career as a top-selling big-pharma rep. Big-pharma rep, where she sold and trained doctors on medications across all major disease states. There was something that happened, of course, that made Jennifer kind of reconsider that whole working in big pharma and career path and all that. We're going to let her tell us about it. But now, needless to say, her career is focused on pursuing natural alternatives with a heart to help people find real hope and healing. And she also has her own medication called Tribernac, which we'll discuss a little bit later on in the show. And I understand it's really good for a lot of stuff that, a lot of common ailments, I guess you would say. Jennifer, did I mess up anything on your bio right there?
No, it all sounds great. Thank you, Robert.
Cool. Well, welcome to the Focus LBK show.
Thanks for having me here.
Oh, yeah. We've been trying to get you on for a while, but everybody's busy and stuff, so it's cool. So tell us a little bit about starting in like pharmaceuticals and regular medicine and the registered nurse training that you got. And once you give us a little synopsis of that, tell us why did you kind of veer away from that?
Sure. So I've been a registered nurse for 16 years now. And through nursing school, I always knew that I wanted to be in the emergency room. Mm-hmm. Like from the time I did clinicals, I knew like ER was my favorite. And what I noticed while working in the ER is that we would get back the same repeat patients that had chronic disease and, give them steroids or, antibiotics. And then, they just come back and no one was ever getting well. So it was just kind of like putting a Band-Aid on, people. And, they were just suffering so much and, continuing to come back and, getting worse and worse and worse no matter what medications they were given. And so when I realized like no one's getting well, from a chronic disease standpoint, I started kind of wondering, what else could be out there. And so when I left the ER, I actually did some day surgery nursing and, would start their IVs and do all the stuff, before, prep them before surgery and then help recover them after. Mm-hmm. And I became a school nurse for 1 year. And that was eye-opening in a lot of ways, like in reference to vaccinations and, other things like childhood illnesses and everything as well in that year that I did that. And then a door opened up for me to get into big pharma, and I've always had a heart for, people and sales and building relationships with people. And so it just felt very natural for me to pursue a career like that. And I did love it, and I loved building the relationships at all the offices that I went to and the physicians that I called on, and really, had good relationships with my work partners and, mm-hmm. Just felt like it was, my favorite job that I'd ever had. And I sold drugs in the primary care market for a couple of years that were, just your basic acid reflux, constipation, diabetes, an antidepressant, and, medications like that. But the more that I moved up and the more specialty jobs, promotions that I got were when I got into selling the infusions and injections that were for diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and multiple sclerosis, in the autoimmune realm. And, when you go and you learn all these things, like you really become a disease state expert in everything that you sell in big pharma because you have such extensive training, that goes on for like 12 weeks, and you learn more about the disease state than even medical doctors do when they go to medical school. They might have 30 minutes on, this certain disease, but you spend 12 weeks learning about the disease state, and then all the medications in the classes that you sell in, not just your own, and then all the side effects, that come with all of the different medications in the class. And when I got into the immunosuppressant medications, I started realizing that these side effects were very severe, including, death, cancer, deadly infections, and, things like that. And again, no one was getting well. There was no hope to get well. It was like, you might not get any worse if you take this, but here's all these side effects, but you never have any hope of getting better or well. And, my whole take on things now is hope. Like, you have to have hope. Without hope, we don't have anything. And so the fact that there are so many hopeless people out there that I know of that are suffering, and their only option is to go down a path that can potentially lead them to getting worse and worse and worse, even with the treatment. And so that's kind of what started waking me up to realize that I really wanted to do something to help people.
Right.
And I ended up leaving Big Pharma and didn't really know what I was going to do. And then my mom actually got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis shortly after. The last drug that I sold was for multiple sclerosis. And when I walked away from it, I said, there's no way anyone I know or love that will listen to me will ever go this route, with a diagnosis like this. And then it happened to my mom.
Because of your experience with that drug and the side effects, you said, no, not for my mom.
Exactly. And, not for myself. And then my mom ended up getting diagnosed, and they were in the hospital. They said, you'll never stand up. You'll never walk again. It was just like doomsday scenario. We're going to start you on this medication, which, by the way, her insurance was covering at $9,000 a month, and it was drop shipped to her house. And I was like, Mom, it wasn't the medication that I had sold, but it was one like it. And I said, Mom, I don't know what we're going to do, but you can't take this.
Right.
We've got to look for something else, and Jesus had saved me earlier, a few months before my mom's diagnosis, after I left Big Pharma and, really started looking into things and seeing the world for what it was. Then, it led me to Jesus saving me and having a completely different outlook on things. And so I knew that we had to have faith. And when my mom was in the hospital and, to my stepdad and everyone, I'm like, don't listen to what they're saying. Like, we have to have, faith in the Lord. And so I think that, that perseverance through, my newly found faith helped me. And really my eyes were open to understanding that there are a lot of lies and deceptions in the world that people blindly follow because it's what everyone else does and what their parents did. And, there's a lot of indoctrination out there. And so, to be able to see past that and know, there has to be some sort of solution to help my mom. And so I took her to the one doctor that always argued with me about my pharmaceuticals. And that's where I started. And, I've since learned a lot from him, throughout my journey. And I personally, have gone to see him and taken my grandmother and, my mother and everything. But he really opened my eyes into, that there are parasitic infections and, the toxins that are in our environment and things like that. And so we started a detox program for my mom. And within 6 weeks, she was able to stand up. And 2 months into it, she was able to walk. And by that testimonial, and I had researched herbs and, different things too. And we did some of the anti-parasitics that you can buy at Tractor Supply, which a lot of that information is going mainstream now. We've been doing that for, I guess, about 6 years now. But, just finding other solutions. And when she was able to, get better when they said she would never get better, then by that testimonial, I started helping other people, and it just kind of grew and evolved. I first started out as Gospel Girls health ministry, and then we became Gospel Wellness, and now we have Good News Organics. with our own products. So, it's just kind of slowly evolved, from starting as a ministry.
So a lot of questions there. You said a lot of interesting things. First, how did you get saved? How did Jesus save you?
So, like I said, I had, left the world behind when I got out of big pharma, and I started really paying attention to the news, which, before I traveled so much and, I was just kind of in my own life, and my life revolved around what shoes I was going to wear, dress I was going to wear that day, or, happy hours and, and so, my life really did change, but I started really focusing in on politics and watching a lot of different news stations and kind of thinking, okay, none of this really seems right. Like this side or that side.
Right.
I don't know what is going on, but like it literally looks like this is just like some sort of play or people acting.
Yeah.
And so I started really doing a lot of research on my own and, into different things throughout history, and really stumbled across a lot of interesting things that really kind of scared me and freaked me out, honestly. Like, hey, there are people that worship Satan, and that, there is a lot of really bad evil going on in the world. And my papa, I used to go to my grandparents' house and show up with a bunch of books, all these books from the Fox News people and all these books. And, what do y'all think about this book? And my papa called me over one day, and he said to his chair, and he said, the only book you need in this world is the Bible.
Yeah.
And that changed my life. And I started reading the Bible and, really started delving into the New Testament, and read the Gospel of John. And then one day, and I was always looking for different sermons and things on YouTube. And I stumbled across this perfect message of the gospel and its simplicity. And I just felt like I knew that Jesus had died for me, and that I was not ever going to be worth anything, on my own, and began to see just how simple my life was, and, everything just kind of flashed before my eyes. And I just, went in my room and got down on my knees in the corner of my room and cried out like, Jesus, save me. And from that moment on, my life's been completely different and a lot better.
Right.
But, it's interesting because then the people that know you before, they think, oh, she's some Jesus freak. Like someone said, like, we heard you were a nun now, and like all kinds of funny stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I am a Jesus freak, and I mean, I wear a Jesus shirt every day and tell everyone about Jesus, because it did just change my life and bring me so much peace. Because I grew up in church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night, Bible quizzing, church competitions, and was brought up that way, but I never had heard the gospel in its simplicity to really change and transform my life, for me to truly trust Jesus as my Savior.
Really? Can you encapsulate real quick what you said, that simple, powerful gospel, man? What was it? You got me interested now. I want to hear it.
Just that, there's like the publican and the Pharisee in Luke chapter 18, where you have the Pharisee who's like, oh, well, thank goodness I'm not like this person or that person. And, I think that that's a lot of the, judgmental religious people. And that's when Jesus said, don't judge. I think that's what he was meaning. And then, you have the publican who just, said, have mercy on me, a sinner. And that's where we need to be, not pointing our fingers at everyone else or looking at, oh, your sin is this or your sin is this. Like, at the end of the day, everyone's a sinner, and the Bible says none of us are good. And so to get to that realization, I was always trying to, I guess I was raised like in a works-based religion, where like, if you sin and you die before you ask forgiveness for that sin, you're going to go to hell, right. And just fear. Yeah. And so I lived in darkness and fear, and not really ever knowing. I didn't have like security of like knowing where I was going once this life ended.
Yeah.
And so the gospel message is that, Jesus died for us, and we just need to trust in him. He rose again, and he defeated death, and we have to trust in him and really know that, we are hopeless and such horrible sinners. I mean, when I saw my sin guilt, and it's like, oh my goodness, but I know that I'm never going to measure up, on my own. And so I think that is really what made the difference in my life of the other gospel that I grew up, not even necessarily believing because it was, such a deception in my opinion, but knowing that I was born again, like Jesus told Nicodemus, like, he must be born again.
Yeah.
And to know that I have eternal life and be assured of that because of what Jesus did for me, and he paid it all for me. And so that's kind of, the message that I try to spread, and why I started Gospel Girls and then Gospel Wellness as a business, Good News Organics, because it is good news. And, I think so many people think that, oh, well, I have to do this, or I have to wait until I can give up this habit, or I can stop sinning in this way before I can even, achieve salvation. And it's not anything that we earn, and you don't have to turn your back on anything. You turn your life to the Lord and, give up and say, like, I can't do this. And, he changes our heart, and, we're born again. And, that's how, the way I see it and the way that it has changed and affected my life, to be able to see a lot of things, even with the health thing, all the deception, even in that, I know that I would not be able to see if I didn't have the Lord.
Right. And the other question from earlier that popped up in my mind, the doctor that you wanted to take your mom to, the one that was pushing back against your pharmaceutical rep stuff. Is he local? Who is he still here? Who is that doctor?
Yeah, he is. He's Dr. Stephen Dalton at Lubbock Integrative Medical Associates.
Okay.
And it's a great practice. Everyone in there is super friendly, and he offers a lot of different alternative, remedies, I guess. And so with my grandma actually exactly a year ago, February 22nd, a year ago, she collapsed. And her caregiver called me and said, I think your grandma's dying. She's having a heart attack. Like, she's sweating. I don't know. And I said, call 911 and then call me back. And anyway, she had a heart arrhythmia from a medication, and she was 90 years old. She's 91 now. But taking my grandma to him after the fact, and when the hospital had already recognized that and pulled her off of it, when I took my grandma there, now she's been pharmaceutical free for 1 year.
Wow.
Completely at 91.
Wow.
And she doesn't have her chronic pain issues. She doesn't have, a lot of the issues that she had before. And, and I'm thankful because there's certain things that he, will say, I wouldn't do this again, or wouldn't allow, this type of treatment again. And, he's very knowledgeable, and I'm very thankful that we have him locally. And honestly, when anyone asks me or recommends, who should I go see, for a doctor, he's always the first person that I tell anyone to go see. Yeah.
That's good to know. I guess I'll try to see if I can look him up and put a link down, in the description, as they say. You mentioned some, what did you call them? The antiparasiticals at TSC. I'm assuming you mean ivermectin. Is there anything else that you were referring to of that? Is there other stuff?
So, there's a lot of different types of antiparasitics that you can get. They work in different ways. They kill off different types of parasites. Some of them block the parasites from uptaking sugar molecules and kind of starve them off. Some paralyze them. And so really, to do, like, for people that have cancer, there's certain protocols that you can find online. I'm not endorsing anything or telling anyone you should do this.
Right.
By the way, I'm not a doctor.
Right.
But we've used fenbendazole, which is a dog wormer, and there's a lot of testimonials. There's a blog called mycancerstory.rocks, and it's a man named Joe Tippins who had stage 4 liver cancer that had spread everywhere, and they said, go home, call hospice, like, you're on your way out. And he got the tip from a veterinarian to take this dog dewormer, fenbendazole. He did that along with a couple of other things, and his cancer completely went away. And so from his blog, and there's, like, Facebook groups that, kind of talk about how to do this protocol and everything. But there's, thousands of testimonials of other people getting rid of their cancer that way also. And then on Joe Rogan's podcast, even a month or so ago, Mel Gibson talked about the fenbendazole and ivermectin. There's albendazole, which is for cows, but it's in the mebendazole, the human form. The problem is, like, to be able to get a prescription from a doctor, or like for mebendazole and other types of antiparasitics, A, it's very expensive to get the human ones, and B, doctors are afraid to prescribe. They don't even know, like, and honestly, they're not trained to know about all these parasitic infections. And that was one of the things that surprises me, because on all the pharmaceutical commercials, if you notice, especially like the immunosuppressant ones, it's like, do not take if you have a parasitic infection, can cause blah, 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 you know? And I'm like, I know we all have parasitic infections, and I have tons of pictures on my phone over the last 5 years of people sending me things that come out of them that's almost unbelievable, you know, and even personally myself. And so I do know that it's real and that we really do have them. They think that, oh, that's only a problem in third world countries, not, you know, here in America. But we deworm our dogs, our cattle. You know, we have livestock. We have a little miniature farm, my husband and I do. And so if we're, you know, even eating livestock, and we're eating these animals, if we're, you know, why would we not have the parasites? Like, we walk on the same ground that they do. You know, we have, you know, dogs climbing on our furniture and, you know, everything. And so, and a lot of people don't even know that they need to be like deworming their dogs unless they like regularly go to a vet. And so that's kind of a issue, because it's not known, and doctors believe that nobody really has a big parasite problem here in America. And they actually have like a diagnosis where they call it a form of psychosis if people go and are like, I know I have parasites, and, you know, I need to be treated for parasites. They actually will basically label people as crazy. Which to me is crazy, because it's like, if only they knew, you know? And then when you do like a stool sample and, you know, to test for parasites, they only test for like a very few. And so most of the time they'd be like, my doctor checked me for parasites and I don't have any. And I'm like, well, that panel isn't, you know, if you take your sample to your vet, you might get another story, you know, on what's in there. But, you know, the fact is that we all have parasites. We all have other toxins in our body. And when it gets overloaded is when we get sick. And that's why you see things like ivermectin working for things like the C word virus. And, you know, we saw many miracles happen, you know, from 2020, 2021, you know, back during the, you know, lockdown time and everything. And I mean, actually had to sneak some ivermectin into the hospitals when people were about to be put on a ventilator. And then they get better and they're in a regular room on regular oxygen within, you know, 24 hours. And then, you know, the other people in there that weren't aware that this was an option, and then were on the medications that were making them worse, like the remdesivir and, you know, those types of things. The hospital treatment is what was causing people to get worse and need a ventilator and cause the organ failure and, you know, leading to sepsis and everything. And so that's another thing too. Like, sepsis is the fifth leading cause of death and the first leading cause of death in hospitals in the United States. And it doesn't get enough recognition. Like, no one really knows like what sepsis is, and there's not a whole lot of awareness. But it basically is when your body is filled up with so much infection and goes into your bloodstream and everything, and, you know, starts shutting everything down. And so I almost died of sepsis and had to get rushed into surgery, and, you know, was very, very sick. And knowing that if I had been taking a proactive approach and eliminated a lot of this toxicity in my body, that probably never would have happened to me. But there's not enough people talking about it. There's not enough people understanding all these infections. And then, you know, you get something like strep throat or, you know, some sort of acute infection and go get antibiotics, or have a toothache, get antibiotics, have, you know, some lung issue, antibiotics. And when you take an antibiotic, it takes 2 to 10 years for your body to detox that antibiotic out of your body. It very much weakens your gut health health, it puts you at a very high risk for even things like depression.
Yeah.
You know, people don't know, like, all these side effects are real, and they're not just like, you know, to ignore at the end of a commercial when it goes on and on and on and on and on.
Right.
You know, they're really real, and they can happen, and they're not uncommon.
Yeah. You know, it's you said a mouthful there. There's so many things I want to, I don't know, we ain't going to have time to get into all this. But so COVID was, well, it was, in a way, it was an eye-opener for me. In a way, it wasn't. Because I was already aware of a lot of stuff, and I already had some alternative opinions, I guess. But the thing is, these opinions are not crazy or alternative. They're just, there's different schools of thought in medicine, and some actually work a little better than some others. And that's really what I'm interested in. So when COVID hit, I was checking out Del Bigtree, the High Wire, and this is in 2020. This is like March 2020, and he was talking about hydrochloroquine and ivermectin and stuff like that. And there were people there were doctors all over the world that were treating people with those and other drugs, Z-Paks and stuff like that, that were beating COVID left and right, but then getting told by their hospitals, you can't, that's not the standard of care. You can't give people zinc and vitamin D and some other stuff, even though it's curing people and you have not lost a patient. And I'm like, what is that? And then I started hearing about the standard of care from a doctor named Jennifer Daniels. She does this thing with turpentine to get parasites out of you. I'm always a little leery of turpentine because I just remember growing up, you scrub stuff with it. I'm like, but apparently it's pine, it's phenols from a pine tree or whatever.
Yeah, it smells like pine salt, so you can just do it topically and you know, start with just one drop and then kind of add to it.
Yeah.
But you can just do it topically on your skin, and
Yeah.
it is good, and I have done that.
So here's the thing that killed me, and it just reinforced me that my instincts were right on this stuff. So of course, you know, Joe Rogan, they talked about ivermectin, and the CDC, or one of those agencies, so-called health agencies, said, stop it, y'all. Ivermectin is for cows, or something to that effect. I think the tweet is still up. They tweeted it out. I'm not going to say X because that's dumb, but they tweeted it out. And so I did my research on it. I'm the kind of guy, I'm a retired intelligence analyst. Yes, I do believe in my ability to understand stuff and read, because that's what I did. It's how I made my living. So I'm checking the stuff out, and I'm like, it's a Nobel Prize winning drug that's used widely in Africa. There's hardly any known side effects. You don't see too many bad things from it, apparently, from what I'm reading. And then we were up in Virginia at the time. And we get down here, come to find out, I know people now that take ivermectin for other stuff. And were taking it during COVID, probably because they had, you know, there are other conditions that it helps with. From a doctor, a regular doctor. So that right there, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. People have lost, from what I understand, a lot of belief in the medical system, and COVID was a big factor. And it was stuff like that. Stop it, y'all. Y'all ain't cows. Don't take ivermectin. Yet I know people who take ivermectin all the time.
And the people that were getting prescriptions for ivermectin for other things, other disease states and everything, maybe off-label use, but their doctors were using it for that. And around here we have a lot of rural country doctors.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people with livestock and everything too. But it's amazing that they were getting threatened. Doctors were getting threatened.
Right.
You know, a lot of them did, you know, lose their licenses or, you know, have to stop practicing because they were pushing things like ivermectin during that time. But ivermectin works for a multitude of things. It really does, because at the end of the day, what I believe is it's all this toxic load on our body.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you do a dose of ivermectin, it lowers that and, you know, really helps. And that's why people that have, you know, any sort of like respiratory issue or, you know, viral issue or anything, and then they take something like ivermectin, they start to get better. I mean, we saw people's fevers come down, you know, during the COVID time in 45 minutes. And then the next day they were basically completely well. And I actually, you know, since I was, you know, health coaching and everything, and people reaching out when they were getting sick because the whole, you know, stigma behind COVID, and everyone was freaked out and just all the fear that was going on. I started a little tally on my own of anyone that reached out saying that they had tested positive. And I would say if they didn't have bad symptoms, or, you know, if they were really sick, I'd say, did you by chance get a flu shot?
Yeah.
This year?
Yeah.
And all the ones that were bad off or worse off had all got a flu shot, and all the ones that weren't very sick at all that had mild symptoms with it, none of them had got a flu shot. And so that kind of started really like, I just feel like one thing leads to another, and anytime we get some sort of injection, then it does put toxins into our body and everything, and leads us to getting sick as well.
Right,
So.
right. And you're touching on something, and we're going to get to it real quick here. You keep saying toxins and toxic load and stuff like that, and that's really getting all into terrain theory versus germ theory. And that's something if y'all checking this show out, if y'all want to just have your wig peeled back with like, what? Check out germ theory versus terrain theory. Is it turtles all the way down? There's a book, I think I've got several books on the nightstand that I'm reading. I think it's turtles all the way down. There's one by Ethel Hume that talks about directly terrain theory versus germ theory. And it's just a mind-blowing thing. And one of the big things that I learned reading about that is that they have never once been able to make somebody sick, or very seldom can they make somebody sick, by directly exposing them to germs that supposedly make you sick. In a lab, scientists, doctors, over in England, I can't remember what it's called, but there was a clinic where they were doing this experiment to see if they could make people sick. And it was like you would take a vacation. They advertise in the newspaper, if you want a vacation, come get a free vacation at this clinic. And while you're here, we'll do an experiment to see if we can give you a cold. So people were like, you go get a paid vacation, and they just try to see if they can make you sick. And apparently tens of thousands of people did this over the years. It was running like, I think after World War II up until like the 70s or something like that. I could be wrong on that, but it was running for some time. And they just couldn't seem to give people a cold. They would get sick people, let them sneeze in people's face, take their mucus and their phlegm and everything and put it in you and on you and in your nose and your eyes. You still wouldn't get sick. On the other hand, they would put you in a dark room or blindfold you and spray some water in your face and let somebody sneeze and say, a sick person just sneezed on you. And then the person would get sick. And then they would say, actually, that was just water. And then the symptoms will go away. Now, I'm not saying that symptoms are made up. I'm saying that they have a hard time making people sick on purpose. One more thing before. So I read about the Spanish flu. Y'all might have heard about the Spanish flu. Mm-hmm. And it was the same thing. They literally, being a military base where these experiments were being done, they literally were able to take sick people and put them face to face with healthy people and tell them, all right, breathe each other's air for 5 minutes. So they would sit there face to face, a healthy guy and a sick guy, and breathe each other's breath back and forth for 5 minutes. The guy wouldn't get sick. He said, okay, now sneeze in his face while you're inhaling. Wouldn't get sick. Okay, let's sneeze on this and we'll put it in this guy's eye glands. Didn't get sick. Let's inject him with your mucus. Didn't get sick. What in the world? Talk about germ theory versus terrain theory.
So I have read, all of that stuff too, and I know just from what I learned in science. I mean, I was always like just the biggest sucker of a student, like wanting to learn and have the highest grade and finish my test first. And, just, I was always that eager of a person. And then to realize like, oh my gosh, I've been duped, like going back to childhood and everything that I learned in science. And, all of these things is, really crazy once your eyes are open, because they go as far as to say, viruses have an envelope around them, and, but the bacteria has a cell wall. This works by doing this. And, it's like, I told my class that I teach at Kingdom Towers a while back, I'm like, everything that I learned about viruses, bacteria, all these different things is, just nothing is the truth. But I don't want to say like, this is my opinion or I believe this to be fact, because I think there's so much information out there that we'll never really know exactly what the truth is. Which is why I just have done the research that I've done and, found a way to help people that, really did prove to help a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And, that's kind of where like my theory comes from, is where, we just have a lot of toxic buildup. There's, the chlorine and fluoride in the water, and, people brushing their teeth with fluoride. That's a huge toxin. I know you've done some things about fluoride too. But people don't know, and they go to the dentist, and then, the dentist and, people that work in there will think parents are crazy if they say, no, don't put fluoride on my child's teeth.
Right.
But they don't know that it's a neurotoxin and,
Right.
Has all these other issues too. And so, I mean, I don't really know what all the answers are, but I know if we can know enough to keep ourselves safe from being aware of toxins, trying to limit our exposure to it, and working to help our body flush out all these toxins. Because you see, our immune system, the way God designed our bodies is to get out anything bad that shouldn't be in there.
Yeah.
But when we have heavy metals and, other toxins in our body that
Pesticides and-
help us hold on to the parasites, because the heavy metals that we get injected with when we're kids lead to a lot of really bad things later on, because the heavy metals help the parasites stay in our body. And then, they go to our brain, and, just a lot of, people have issues from dental work that they've had, and root canals, and, there's documentaries on Netflix and everything, coming out about that too. But that's why I feel like, because everything is so toxic, and because we're never going to know anything, if we can take a proactive approach with something as simple as this, like in this one bottle, to help our body flush things out, then we're a lot better off.
Right. So, and just to kind of summarize and bring it back around to terrain theory versus germ theory. So, and I kind of feel like you. I'm not saying it like I know for a fact. I don't know anything for a fact. That's where I'm at in life right now. Is like everything I've ever been told is a lie, apparently, because all you do is you look up and you go, wait a minute. There's a whole other school of thought on this, and then you become acquainted with the facts on it. You're like, well, why is that true? Well, what does that mean? Then you start reading, and you just now you're down the prairie dog hole on it. You're like, oh man, I'm all up in terrain theory. Terrain theory says that basically, like you're saying, there's toxins in the atmosphere. There's the food, the water, the air. There's there's pesticides, there's parasites, there's all kind of stuff. So you're loaded down with toxins, and once you are loaded down, that's when you start being susceptible to disease, and that's when you start having issues that you call. And the other side of that coin is the virus people will say, no, there's these little invisible enemies. And I, as a former military man, intelligence guy, I'm big on this whole invisible enemies thing, because I notice all the stuff they talk about on the news, they try to scare you. So they always try to scare you with invisible enemies. Boogeyman.
Yeah.
We did the same thing. We were telling our kids, don't do that. The boogeyman get you. It's the same thing. Al-Qaeda's going to get you. Well, ISIS is going to get you. Virus is going to get you. Everything's going to get you. Well, that's a great way to keep people scared, which fear depresses your immune system, my understanding, just my little research. And the other thing is, it's a great way to make money. So germ theory says that there's a virus out there, or a bad guy, but invisible boogeyman, bacteria, virus, whatever. You can't see them, but if they get you, they're going to get in your body and get in your cells and start multiplying. And then, okay, that makes sense, because I see people get sick, and then the guy next to him gets sick. So then the family gets sick when the kid come home. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, I guess. But then you learn they can't make people sick on purpose when they want to in these experiments. Well, how is that possible? And the other thing is that just kills me about germ theory versus terrain theory is the unnatural extent they have to go through, these scientists and doctors doing these experiments. Since they can't make you sick with a virus, they'll be like, we sprayed it in your face and you didn't get sick. We sprayed it in your nose, you didn't get sick. We made you drink it, you didn't get sick. They in one experiment, they literally like drilled a hole in a monkey's head because it was polio. They were trying to make the monkeys catch polio. They couldn't get them to catch polio. So they took ground up spinal cord and brain tissue from another monkey that had polio, injected it in a monkey, didn't give him polio, sprayed it on him, didn't get him, stick it in his nose, didn't get polio. Finally, they drilled a hole in his head and put like a quarter of a cup of that ground up polio monkey spinal stuff in there. And then the monkey got polio. And they said, see, gives you polio. I was like, no, man, it don't. What in the world? I'm not saying I know anything. I'm saying I'm confused, and I have no faith in what anybody says anymore. Hardly.
And I think a lot of people are getting there, but I think that when they, release these fear campaigns, like the current measles outbreak.
Yeah.
I'm from Gaines County. That's, my hometown.
Was that Seminole?
Seminole. Seagraves is where I grew up, but same county. And I think it's very unfortunate that the Mennonite community has been targeted, for not only their religious beliefs or, not wanting to get vaccines. I personally have a lot of people in the Mennonite community that I love and care for just as if they're my own family. And so I hate to see them being targeted and, judged because of their beliefs, because I will tell you, after being a school nurse here in the state of Texas, there's a very high number of everyday people who do not vaccinate their children, and they get waivers from the state.
Yep.
And, have a form notarized. And what I noticed in the year that I was a school nurse is that the kids that had the waivers that didn't get the vaccines were the ones who did not get sick.
Yep.
And I mean, it's a pretty high number of kids. And so, and everyone's out there, there's this Natural Mamas Lubbock Facebook group, and there were some moles in there. There's a couple of thousand like-minded women who are in a group who discuss things. And there was a mole in that group that was taking screenshots and actually posting them on KCBD, like calling out people's names. And then people are like, we need a list of all the unvaccinated people. They should just die. They're so ignorant, And
so apparently they didn't learn nothing from COVID.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, if your vaccine works, why are you scared?
That's what always gets me the most. It's like saying, it's the analogy it's like saying, you got to wear a bulletproof vest because I got my bulletproof vest on, but you ain't got your bulletproof vest on. So if you ain't got yours on, mine ain't going to work. And the first question I have is, well, is anybody shooting anybody? Why we need a bulletproof vest on? And second of all, what's wrong with your bulletproof vest if I got to have on one for it to work, for yours to work? Nonsense. Fear.
And the fact that they made everyone wear masks, and that is causing people more harm. My sister's a school teacher, and every day she had to wear a mask all day long, and I'm like, that is not good for you. I'm like, quit your job, do something else. Like, right. I don't want you in that environment, anyway, but she loves what she does. And, and I'm glad that she does. But, just having to be in a place where you have to have roles, and so many people that had to get, the COVID vaccine to keep their jobs, that to me was very eye-opening. And that to me was very eye-opening politically as well. And, because there are so many people that are, Trump's going to fix everything, Trump this, Trump that, but he's the father of the COVID vaccine.
Right.
Right. So that's the thing, like everything is so confusing. And that's why no one is going to be able to know the truth about this whole stuff, or exactly what COVID is, exactly what is going on, because they put out so much mass confusion, and that's the whole point. I think that's the agenda, is to have all this different information out there to keep the masses confused. And when a society is confused and unsure, and they come at you with fear, you're going to have more people fall in line and comply through the fear. Yep. I mean, I even heard a doctor, they were talking about the Gaines County measles outbreak, and how, in this community, there's, the Mennonite community, that a lot of them, don't get vaccinated because of their religious beliefs. And, then this lady on the news was like, well, now that one child has died, maybe, they'll start going out and getting their vaccines. And then the doctor that she was interviewing said, oh yeah, because fear does that. Fear makes people that normally wouldn't do it go ahead and go do it. Well, where does fear come from?
Right.
And where does confusion come from?
Yeah.
Like, if you believe the Bible, we know where all that stuff comes from. And, we know who the prince of the power of the air is, and all of that.
You said something earlier that really I wanted to go back to. So I don't watch that much TV. That's weird because I'm a videographer and I make movies. But I don't really watch TV. I never have. People always say, you didn't see Ferris Bueller's Day Off? No. You didn't see Breakfast Club? No. You didn't see something? No. I haven't seen any of that stuff. I don't know why I don't watch TV, but the point is I don't watch too much TV. I have certain stuff I like to watch, Netflix or whatever. There's stuff that I like to watch, but I don't just watch TV like what's on. So when COVID was happening, we were still in Maryland, but we moved to Virginia during COVID, like right when it was popping off. And now I didn't watch TV, so I was like, whatever. Okay. We kept doing everything we were doing, and we weren't like scared, and we weren't masking all up. And so I go into the barbershop one day. I had to find a new barber in a new city. I'm like, oh, it's the worst thing ever, by the way. Once you get a good barber, you know if he moves, you're going to move with him. If he moved to the next town, I'm going to drive over there. Anyway, so I'm trying to find this new barber, and I go up, I'm looking online, it's okay, right here. So I go to this dude's shop, and it was shell shock. You know, like Private Ryan when they getting when they walking up on the shore, and it's like, ee! I was shell shocked because they had the news on, and I hadn't seen it, the counters and it was like you said, surreal. I was like, this is a movie. This is a straight up movie. This is like a zombie movie, like Outbreak or something. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, this ain't real. I was like, y'all can't tell that's a movie. And I was looking around in the barbershop, and everybody was scared and masked up. And the barber, the guy that owns it, he was taking it real serious. He was making you do your temperature and stuff. And I'm like, okay.
And then when it's like the summertime and it's hot outside, and then you walk in and it's like, oh, you're too hot. But it's like, I'm sweating and I'm hot. I don't have a fever. Like, it's 105 degrees outside, you know? And they would deny you entrance to stores if, you know, you had a fever. And I mean, it was crazy. I mean, that whole time period was just like, this cannot really be going on. But then it amazed me how many people were so bought into it. Yeah. And that to me is the scary part.
Shows you the scary part too was how people were so serious about it. And they were, you talking about, Nazi Germany couldn't happen. Yes, it could. It could happen right here.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is a lot of, what has been going on, because people are trapped in fear, and we're raised to go to school and believe the experts and trust the science and but where is the actual facts? Right. Where are the facts? There are studies, about ivermectin that show its efficacy among a multitude of things, from blood clots to cancer to, heart disease and everything. And so, why do they deny those facts? Right. Why do they, it's just the facts that the people at the top want people to know so that they can continue to make more money and, have just a circle of continuous people being sick and getting sicker and sicker and sicker. Mm-hmm. And, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. And all this is it's just opinions. We're two people, I think, that just, we've had our eyes open to certain things and certain different walks of life. Mine was from being in the military, being in military intelligence and seeing that, wait a minute, that's not what happened. You looking at TV, they saying, oh, the so-and-so did so-and-so to so, that's why they did this, that, and the other. And you're at work checking out the real deal. Like I'm listening to in a foreign language, listening, like that ain't what happened at all. What are they talking about? That's made up.
Well, even during COVID, like it was eye-opening to me whenever it's like, oh, we're getting all these car manufacturers to make all these ventilators because we're going to need all these ventilators, you know? And I mean, I know there probably are, a few survivors that survived getting off a ventilator from having COVID, but for the most part, it is a death sentence when you go on one of those machines. Mm-hmm. And, then you get ventilator-acquired pneumonia and sepsis and, it's just very awful way to go. Mm-hmm. But they were making sure to get all of those, made with billions of dollars to have enough of those when ivermectin, the cattle pour-on kind from Tractor Supply is 12 cents for a dose. 12 cents. Mm-hmm. And, that was life-saving for a lot of people that I know, in that situation. And so, that when you look at it that way, oh, we're doing all of this, they're just saving the world with, all of this expensive stuff. And now we're getting this, billions of dollars of vaccines and billions of dollars of this when, something so easy fixed a lot of people's problems during that time that cost very little. Yeah. And, that was eye-opening. And another thing, too, is my grandparents raised me. And so thinking about all of the people that were not able to go in and see their grandparents
Yeah.
or parents in nursing homes,
Yeah.
to me, that killed me. And I was
Yeah.
thankful that my grandparents were at home. And I have, had bouts of, really pushing, and advocating for my grandparents against other family members that have been trying to put them in a home since about 2017. And, when this happened, I'm like, this is exactly why they do not need to be in a nursing home. And if they can have, private care and afford private care at home, that's the way we need to do it. And I'm so thankful that my grandparents were not in a home at that time. And my grandma's 91 and still alive. My papa lived until 90, and neither one of them ever had the COVID vaccine. And my papa was on hospice, and, I just very much advocated, like, they do not need this. And I'm thankful to still have my grandma with me, and not in a nursing home, because I saw videos on YouTube of a girl like trying to get in to see her grandma and just like crying, and just I remember just feeling that like compassion for her. Like, if that were me, like, I would end up going to prison, breaking into that place and getting my grandma out of there. But really, how can this be America when they can keep you from your loved ones
Right.
at the end of their life, and basically make these people die from sadness, from, isolation away from their families?
Yeah.
Like, how can that happen in America? To me, that is a Nazi Germany scenario.
And really, it's your family and being able to be buoyed up by your loved ones and be around people. That's what gives you the will to fight and stay alive. A lot of elderly people, especially in situations like that, they just give up. They don't want to be there no more. Mm-hmm. And if you're not letting somebody see their family, if you're not letting somebody eat the way they want to eat or do what they want to do, I wouldn't want to live like. To me, that's being alive, but it's not living. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I couldn't deal with it, I don't think. Mm-hmm. And talk to us a little bit about Tribernac. I got a lot of questions about that. I've never known anybody that actually made a medication or made a supplement. So my first question is, how in the heck do you make a medication or a supplement? It got stuck. Oh. He wasn't doing anything. He was just standing there, and he was like, I was ringing the bell. Did y'all hear me? But he wasn't even touching it.
We heard it.
Yeah, we did.
Third times.
Yeah. We still rolling?
Everything's still rolling.
Oh, okay, good. Everything sounding good, looking good?
Good.
All right, cool. So I'm just going to start off with that question about Tribernac, and we'll just take it there because that'll be a good I think that's where we started anyway. Okay. That's where the bell started ringing. Mm-hmm. So,
it was.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, Jennifer, I have the question that I'm really curious about. I've never actually known somebody who has made a supplement. So, when I look at Tribernac right here, the first thing I wonder is like, how do you make a supplement? Like, I can look at this and tell you don't make this in your garage. You know what I'm saying? This is some professional stuff. So there's labs and all kind of stuff involved here, right? How does that? First of all, how did you come up with it? And second of all, how does it made? How is it?
So it was never my plan to launch my own nutraceutical. It just kind of evolved, and when I first started out helping people, and then with COVID, like I first started helping out people that had really severe disease processes, and I was working with another guy, and it just kind of evolved where I kind of took on my own people, and I never really. Anything that I've done over the last 5 years has not ever been my plan or what I think I'm going to be doing. And so when researching, all these different herbs and different type of supplements, once I had the revelation, and really COVID helped me with that too, that everything's all the same, whether it's cancer, diabetes, heart disease, MS, any type of autoimmune, that it's all from this toxic buildup in our bodies. And so, when like COVID came out, ivermectin and berberine, which is an ingredient in Tribernac, were the only two things that showed any progress in the late, hyper-inflammatory response phase of COVID. Mm-hmm. And there was just a lot of evidence to support berberine for that. Berberine is also a natural alternative for diabetes. And in head-to-head studies against metformin, which is the first-line treatment for type 2 diabetes in the pharmaceutical realm, is proven just as effective. Plus, it has so many other benefits for your body. It's very good for your gut health, very good for your heart health. And so then I just started looking into, berbeриne's efficacy against this type of disease and this type of disease. And so I started using berberine for everybody. I'm like, everybody needs berberine, everybody, and so I had developed what I called my basic wellness protocol, which is the top 3 things I think anybody should be taking. And that was berberine and then NAC, which is an amino acid. And it helps our body detox. It helps our body produce more glutathione, which is our number 1 way that our body detoxes anything. And so NAC is primarily used in the hospital when someone has like an overdose on Tylenol because it's so toxic to the liver. And that's really the only few times I ever use it, but it is technically a drug also and a, dietary supplement. And so, but that's the only time that they really use it or that I ever had heard of it, in ER nursing and everything. And so, but NAC is good for neurological disease, mental health, gut health, diabetes. I mean, you name it, it's good for, everything. And then I knew that gut health is, at the center of, all of our overall health, our immune system and everything. And realizing that leaky gut was such a big issue. And there's really not a good solution because we can do everything we can to try to eat as clean as possible. And that's the thing. And, my years of health coaching, I have seen some of the cleanest eaters that, they will almost go to tears and like show you everything in their cabinet. Like I'm doing everything possible and like I'm not getting any better. And which is surprising because a lot of the alternative physicians out there will say like, this is the key. And if you're not doing this, if you're not eating exactly this way, that's why you're not getting better. But even people that do, they still have a hard time because there's still not anything being done about the toxic load in their body. And so tributyrin is the other ingredient. That's what Tribernac, tributyrin, berberine, NAC is how it got its name. But tributyrin is a postbiotic. So you have prebiotics and probiotics, and it's a postbiotic. So it's a short-chain fatty acid that helps heal and seal our gut lining, helps improve your digestion, and, has lots of studies how, it's efficacious against, lots of different disease states as well. And so I had those in 3 different bottles that people would come see me. And I would make them a plan and, say, I think, you benefit by taking this. But everyone needed the basic wellness protocol. And so, then when COVID happened and all of this was going on, we had a lot of supply issues of trying to get berberine. And I'm a stickler about, I want clean products because a lot of dietary supplements out there have heavy metals. They have, other toxic type things in there. And so I would research and find the best berberine and, order a whole bunch. And then, get to the bottom of my stash, go to reorder. Now I have to spend hours researching, finding another berberine. And, so it was the same of trying to get all these different products in to keep as many people as I had on my basic wellness protocol. Because once you help someone, then they tell someone, then it just kind of spreads. And so, I had clients all over the country, even internationally. I've helped people. And so when I helped Ron Beatonbow with his health, and from my basic wellness protocol of the 3 bottles, his chronic cough that he'd had for more than 15 years with pulmonary fibrosis literally vanished. It was gone. And he was shocked. He was like, I've been to the Mayo Clinic. I've paid all this money to go, all these different places, alternative places. Why has no one ever told me about this? And I said, well, it's because he said, what have you given me that's obliterated this cough of mine? And I said, well, it's everything working together, but especially the NAC because it's a mucolytic and, it works this way. And he said, well, why has no one ever told me about it? And I said, because the bottle costs $20 and it lasts a couple months. No one's going to tell you about that because there is no, there's no money to be made, and even, with my health coaching with, the low cost of the, all the things that I had, like there really was no money. Like it was a ministry. I was doing it from my heart and every bit of money that was coming in from, the supplements and, my time and everything would just go back into ordering more pills. And, so after I helped Ron and he was really passionate about it, I helped, a lot of people in his family. And his daughter moved here to help me with the business from Austin. And when she saw the struggle of, I'm like, we can't get this berberine. We can't, just all the hiccups that we had along the way of trying to get enough product for our people. She was like, why don't we just make our own and put it all together in one bottle? I'm like, hey, that sounds good. Like, let's do it.
Right.
We had no idea how long it was going to take, how hard it was, how much we'd have to fight for my certain formula, to fight for the clean ingredients. And, really, I mean, it took a lot of pushing. We had to hire, a expert product formulator in Utah to help us really nail down the formula. Because I needed it to be my exact clinical dosing that I had used, because that's the protocol that works. So I needed to basically take the amount of, what's in this bottle and the amount of, dose in this bottle and this bottle, and figure out a way to put it all together where in each pill, like, that was a complicated process. But we did that. And then he helped us with that. And then trying to find a manufacturer, we went and toured a couple of manufacturing places, and we really wanted them to be manufactured here in Texas. But we couldn't find a manufacturer that would make this formula the exact way that it needed to be. And so we had to hire a regulatory consultant all the way up in Canada, a guy that I found on YouTube. And he definitely is a very well-known expert in his industry. And so he helped us find the right manufacturer. And then that process still took, about 8 months of working with them and, getting pushback. And one of the ingredients in here is a branded ingredient of Tribernac, and that's the only one that you can find. And they were trying to push back on my formula, saying, no, everyone would try to change my formula. And I'm like, this is the exact dose it needs to be to work. We can't make any compromises.
Right.
And so it was a long process. It took about 1.5 years of product development to get this made. And if we'd have known then what we knew now of how long it was going to take, I mean, honestly, it is worth it, and it's helping people, so I'm glad that we did. But neither one of us knew the extent it was going to, take both of us to, get these pills made. But now we have them, and if you notice it, our little saying here is eat, poop, and be happy. So when I sold drugs in Big Pharma, at one point my bag mix was drug for acid reflux, another one for constipation, and an antidepressant. And so when I went places, I just say, Doc, I got everything your patients need to eat, poop, and be happy. And that's how everybody knew me. And a boss, district manager, came to do a ride along with me, and he said, everyone said, what are you doing up there to, blow all your cells up in Lubbock? And I was like, I just tell them I got everything you need to eat, poop, and be happy. And that manager said, you better not be saying that. And I'm like, I'm really not, And he came to do a ride along with me, and the doctor came out, and he was like, oh, hey, eat, poop, and be happy. But he knew all my drugs and what they were used for and everything. And anyway, so that's just kind of a funny thing. But now this is all of those things in one pill, because, our gut health is central to, our mental health. And we have so many reports of people's brain fog going away. They sleep better. About 70% of people that are taking it that, we've heard back from are all able to sleep better. And, whenever we sleep, that's when our body restores itself. And, it really helps with so many things. It's designed to be an overall approach for your entire immune system, but when the ingredients in it are potent liver detoxes. And so our liver being backed up is a lot of why we get sick too. And not to mention people that have a history of drug or alcohol use and abuse, that are told, oh, you've got cirrhosis, it's so bad, there's really nothing you can do. But this is a potent liver cleanse, and so when you can take a proactive approach to your health, like, I'm not claiming that this fixes anything or cures any disease. Like, in my mind, like, all disease is the same, and it's a, toxic buildup in the body, like I say over and over. But when you can take a proactive approach with a simple detox and allow your body to get rid of a lot of the bad stuff that's in there, support your, insulin resistance and everything, like, with the berberine, the reason it works for type 2 diabetes so well is because it works on the, insulin resistance and everything. And now they're saying that Alzheimer's and dementia is type 3 diabetes,
Yeah, I've heard that.
and that it's, sugar in your brain and everything. And so I do believe that is a big aspect of, what causes disease, even heart disease and other types of diseases in the body. And so I think that, that taking an approach to helping keep your blood sugars regulated in your body is how this, works for so many different things as well. And even like people that wake up to go to the bathroom a lot in the night, there's research that supports the fact that that's actually from insulin resistance and everything. So, you know, it's just a overall.
Oh yeah, because it's your body trying to get sugar out. Trying to urinate out the sugars and stuff that you're not producing enough insulin to
And then with weight
metabolite.
loss, you have so many people on all these weight loss drugs that were designed for diabetes. And then, you know, now they're taking them off label for weight loss. And not only do they cost a lot, but they have, you know, black box warnings and, you know, a lot of things. And then you hear like the things about like Ozempic face and, you know, all these things.
Yep.
And so this is like a natural alternative for that. You just have to take a higher dose. So like anyone who is just wanting regular overall maintenance for their health, it's just 2 pills twice a day. But for anyone who is wanting to help regulate their blood sugar or lose weight, you can take 3 to 4 doses a day. And that really, you know, makes a bigger difference in appetite suppression, decrease in sugar cravings, and, you know, all those types of things, and helping people sleep better. But so we've seen so much weight loss on this. I mean, 25 to 30 pounds in the first 90 days, and, you know, really, you know, significant impacts in people. And people that have been on my protocol, even before it was in this one bottle, one girl's lost 100 pounds, and, you know, in complete remission from her disease state, that she had multiple sclerosis, and she wasn't able to work for 4 years, and now has a really good job. Her job paid for her to get her CDL. She's a truck driver.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, I even had to go to her neurologist appointment with her to help her get her form filled out, because those types of diseases can keep you, you know, from even getting a promotion at your job.
Wow.
You know, and so yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but you know, my heart was to give people hope. And, you know, even my last class at Kingdom Towers was about hope, and that we never can give up hope. And I think I went from a hopeless situation myself, suffering from autoimmune disease and, you know, being sick and, you know, just kind of chronically being ill throughout my life. And then, you know, my mom and, you know, just seeing other people suffering as a nurse, and then to have something that is so simple. It's like the simplicity of the gospel. The simplicity of this, like, it's almost too hard for people to even grasp.
Right.
That it can be so simple, because people are like, oh, well, what would my doctor say about it? Well, you know, doctors really aren't, you know, educated in this way, and they know what they know.
Right.
And, you know, there is another way.
Yeah.
And there shouldn't be a stigma behind people having medical freedom and freedom to choose their own path per se. But I know a lot of people that choose to go a natural way, and then they get, you know, complete and total opposition from their family, and, you know, not encouragement, but then they see them get better, and they're like, okay, well, you know, here you go. You can't deny, the transformation in people.
Right. We've been going for quite a while. I don't want to hold you up too much longer, but I mean, I have so many questions. I guess the other question is, you alluded to your practice, or not practice, but your do you have where people can come get consultations or something like that?
So, I used to, when I started out, I just kind of helped people, you know, and then it evolved to where I had an office, and then we actually got a bigger office, and I did see people one-on-one, and you know, kept a client base, but it got pretty much too large for me to just, you know, handle on my own. And then I took over my grandmother's care a year ago, and Chelsea and I were really focused on, you know, getting this product developed. And so I kind of took a step back, and our goal is to provide education, you know, through just everything. Now that it's not in, you know, 3 different bottles, it's not that complicated, since it's in one bottle. Our passion and goal in launching this was to just share information to everyone versus having to have one-on-one coaching. And so I've stepped aside from doing that, and the client base that I had before, and a lot of my friends and family, I have a booth at KK's Corner Mall that has like all of what I think are the essential supplements needed for, you know, anything that's wrong with anyone. It's just my little natural pharmacy, FARMACY. That has, you know, and a little guide that says, you know, take this for this, or, you know, this is good for that. And so that's kind of where that evolved to, is serving people out of the retail location, and then having this available.
I see.
now.
Where so aside from KK's Corner Mall, what are we? GoodNewsOrganics.com is the website.
GoodNewsOrganics.com is the website, and locally here in Lubbock, it is at Natural Health Market, Nature's Tonic, and Hub City Organics.
Okay.
So far, so available at all three of those locations and KK's Corner Mall.
Okay.
As well.
Sounds good. I got one more question that we have to go back a little bit to something that you mentioned. So when you were a nurse, where you were in the hospital, was that during COVID or was that after?
No, that was way before.
Okay.
Yeah, that was way before. That was when I first started out in nursing, and it was actually in the swine flu era.
Oh, 2009 and 10. Yeah.
Yeah. It was actually during that time, and we would they would swab our nose every day whenever we get to work. And
Really?
even back in that time, we'd have to wear all the garb. And I remember getting the swine flu vaccine, and all the shots that I got as a nurse, and I was always sick. I got meningitis when I was a nurse. I had got strep throat so many times, and like where it'd be big abscesses, they'd have to go in and drain them.
Yeah.
Like I was constantly sick. And I don't get sick like that anymore. But I had to get so many shots. And when I would get the shots is when I would get sick. And so now knowing what I know, I see why, why I continued to be sick all the time. But in the swine flu era, when we had to take the swine flu vaccine, I just remember I got my vaccine and then I got swine flu.
Yeah.
And I just remember laying there, and I had such a high fever and everything, and my whole body just hurt, and I was like, body aches, like, no, this is body pain, and like, suffering so
Right.
bad. And, it's really sad because when I first started out, like I said, as a baby nurse, I did Baylor's ER internship for like 20 weeks. And so I worked for the Baylor healthcare system in Dallas. And during that time, there was an 18-year-old kid that came in, and he had tested positive for swine flu. They had put him on Tamiflu. He came into the ER, and he was having trouble breathing. We couldn't get his oxygen up. He was like 70% oxygen on a non-rebreather.
Right.
And they immediately were like, we need to intubate him, and, did all this stuff. And then I'm, running all the IV drips and everything that, make your basically body shut down into where you don't get blood flow to, your blood only shuts to your vital organs and everything.
Right.
And anyway, I feel so bad now knowing what I know. And like, there's not a day that goes by that I haven't thought about this kid, like even before COVID and even before I woke up to all the things that I know now, that it always bothered me so much, because he ended up dying, and he was only 18 years old, and we do hear these stories, and I don't want like anybody who's watching this to say, oh, my grandma died from COVID or my dad died from COVID. Like you don't care about that. Like I do care. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing to help prevent people from getting sick. I do care. And I do want people to know that there is another way. And I do want people to, think twice before they just blindly accept a treatment without looking into it first. And so, that's just another little snippet I want to add in there. Like, I do care. And I do care about that kid that passed away when he was only 18. And knowing now, like, if I'd had a little bottle of ivermectin to pour on him, like
Right.
he would probably have been fine, and that's what's sad. Because I have seen that happen, and I have seen people use ivermectin and literally get better, immediately, and I have seen people, I've seen people with very large tumors documented on brain scans the size of a grapefruit, and then do a lot of deworming things and, detoxing, and that tumor be completely gone when they were given 2 months to live, by MD Anderson and a cancer center in Dallas.
Wow.
Of a huge big tumor, and then that tumor be gone.
Yeah.
I mean, and so there is always hope. There is another way, and there are lots of natural ways. I'm not saying this is the end all be all. Like, I do think that this would benefit anybody, and that's why Chelsea and I were so passionate about getting this made, but. There are lots of herbal things out there and lots of ways to go about finding ways to help yourself in a very simple, inexpensive way that a lot of times works better than the treatments that are available in hospitals and from doctors.
Right. I got about 17 more questions, but we'll ask them next time because I think we've been going for quite a while here. Try to keep this to about 45 minutes to an hour. I don't even know where we are, honestly. Jennifer?
We're past an hour.
Okay. Jennifer, thank you for stopping by the Focus LBK show. Lubbock out there, man, I hope y'all found this conversation as interesting as I did. Like I said, I still got I bet you I can think of 15 questions off the top of my head. We're not going to do that. I really want to talk about PCR tests. We'll talk about that next time, maybe. That just gets your goat right there. Anyway,
I agree.
we're gonna cut it. We're gonna cut it right here. But I hope y'all enjoyed this conversation. Also, check out goodnewsorganics.com if you heard something interesting or something you want to check out further. Got the stores at KK's Craft Malls and a bunch of those other places I'm not even familiar with. We'll try to get those links down here in the description. Is there anything you want to close out with that we have? Just briefly let them know before we slide out the door.
Never give up hope. If you're suffering, there is hope, and I just pray that you will find it and that you will get better. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for having me. Okay,
it's our pleasure. LBK, man, what I'm starting to realize is you got to take your own health into your own hands, and they act like it's a bad thing, but you got to do your own research, your own reading. I don't know. Believe the misinformation. Sometimes the misinformation is the actual information. By the way, you reminded me of something. When you hear people talk about misinformation and disinformation and stuff like that, the main thing I take away from that is that those are intelligence community terms. So why are they suddenly being talked about on the news, and why are people accusing people of misinformation and disinformation and stuff like that? You notice how those just popped up really in the last 5 years maybe? Something like that. Those are intel community terms. Very interesting. All right, love it. That's enough for one day. We want to bid y'all peace, 2 digits, and we'll catch y'all next time.
What's that creeping around me? Nudges in the spirit is what it be. Footsteps in the